All right, welcome to another live podcast. This will be the final instant reaction podcast of the season. The Patriots eliminated from playoff contention by the Buffalo Bills today, 35-23. And listen, it wasn't all pretty, certainly on the special teams, but I thought that overall the Patriots actually played pretty well today, and it was a heck of a lot closer than I expected it to be.
Yeah, and that seems to be kind of the story of a lot of the big games the Patriots played this year, too. There's been quite a few of these where it's a big moment, and they made a lot of plays, and they make you feel good. And it's like, all right, we can build on this, but at some point, you got to turn them into wins, too. And it's a really good. I was impressed with the emotional maturity of this team in this moment to go into Buffalo, and I mean, even just showing up. I mean, after the opening kickoff return touchdown and going 3-and-out immediately with the offensive line just getting killed by the Bills' defensive line there, you could have wilted in that moment. Could have given up and said, this is too tough. And they didn't. So I was impressed there. Thought most of the players made good plays. It obviously wasn't perfect. And you're not going to play a perfect football game, too. Like, that's part of it. There's always going to be mistakes.
Right.
I thought on the offense and defense, there was a lot of good. The special teams left a lot to be desired. I want to lead off the special teams discussion here to put a little context into this. Let's not forget this team cut Justin Bethel coming into the season.
Yep.
And then Cody Davis got hurt and done for the year. And now Brendan Schooler was out today. I believe he had an injury he was dealing with, and he was inactive. So we can talk about the coaching situation too, and that obviously needs to be addressed at special teams. Players got to make plays, and the backups did not step up. The backups did not do the job. Raleigh Webb is one of the worst special teamers I've ever seen in my life. He is truly horrendous out there, and he wouldn't be on the field without some of the other, we'll say, personnel decisions there with Bethel and the health concerns with other guys. And there's multiple times this year where it felt like the Patriots were kind of a player or two away from being in a game. And think about how many injuries they've had and just how frustrating that is when it mounts all season. And just the depth wasn't there this year.
Yeah. It's frustrating, but I don't know what that echo is all about, man. I don't know if it's on my end or your end, but it sounds awful.
I don't hear an echo. If you guys hear an echo in the chat, let us know.
Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But either way, Oliver says Cam Akord must be arrested. I agree. You know what? Take Miles Bryant with him. That's a top 10 worst play of the season. I mean, you get to a point where this guy runs through the hole and you're standing there in the hole on that kick return and you have a clear shot at taking him down. And he just misses him. He just bounces right off him. And it's like, man, you got to be kidding me with that. You've got to be kidding me with that. And that's some of the stuff that's so frustrating where you just look at it and think like, you can't have that type of crap happen on your football team. And so, that's one of the things for me is like, you walk away from the season saying you have these good things and you have these bad things. And the Justin Bethel thing doesn't make any sense to me. Why he was cut makes no sense. There's no reason to cut him. And maybe you said, hey, we need more guys to do more things. But Raleigh Webb, he's doing nothing for you. Nothing. It just special teams, right? So like, what's the difference between Justin Bethel and I know like Cody Davis goes down, so you get it, but like, it's one of those things for me that like, some of those personnel decisions over the offseason, you're kind of like, hey man, like we needed some of these special teams guys and we weren't able to have them on the roster for some reason.
And it's also, I mean, team building is tough. Like it's evaluating all this stuff is tough and getting the right guys out there. It's a hard job. It's why we see GMs get fired all the time. It's not easy work. And it happens sometimes. On the Bryant thing too, first of all, Buffalo's got to be a house of horrors for Miles Bryant at this point after the playoff game last year and now this one. Like, he's got to be terrified anytime he sees that stadium. I feel bad for him there. And the other thing is that if the way things pan out is you're relying on somebody Miles Bryant's size to make a one-on-one touchdown saving tackle, something else has probably also gone wrong on your kickoff return. And I mean, you look at the end of the game too. Like obviously the Bills scored that last touchdown to kind of put the nail in the coffin. It felt like What does that get set up by? Well, you kick it out of bounds by accident on the squib kick because you can't trust the return team.
Right.
And I felt like the Patriots were, I can't say a good team, but a decent team, at least when they put everything together, but not good enough to overcome the small mistakes. And they couldn't, and then every team's going to make small mistakes. Even the best coached teams are going to make small mistakes too. So you need, at a certain point, you just need the players to play better, and that's coaching's responsibility to make them play better.
Quite true. Quite true. So, we'll see what happens. It's just, it's very frustrating, and it's really hard because, and they're talking about Slater's giving his press conference now. David Andrews gave his press conference. I don't know if Matthew Slater comes back next year. I just don't know if he does.
Doesn't feel like he does.
It certainly doesn't feel like he is, and it also feels like Devin McCourty isn't coming back either. So, it's just it's hard. And the thing that really sucks is that if Slater does retire, for his last game to be a game like that where the special teams just blows it so incredibly bad. I mean, they lost this game because of special teams. They gave up 14 points on special teams and then gave the Bills a short field. They scored another touchdown on that drive as well. They lost by 12 points. 12. They lost by 12 and they gave up 14 on special teams. And like I say, then you have another one where you give them the ball at the 40-yard line instead. It's just like that type of stuff is the absolute killer. And the fact that you don't have, I think the polarity thing is interesting because you couldn't find a punter who could kick off. Like you couldn't find anyone who could kick off. Like
I'm sure they just trusted Falk with that. I mean, you would expect Falk with all of his experience to be able to handle kind of the technique-based stuff. That's not a power thing on squib. That's pure technique. If Falk can't execute that, I don't think a punter's going to do that part better.
But to me, you have a guy that can A, either kick it out of the end zone, or B, pop it up and get it high enough so that when it's at the 1-yard line, we get guys down there, to block. Nick Folk isn't that guy. So Vizcaino wasn't that guy either. So bring in someone else. Or bring in someone who isn't Pilardi. Like, Pilardi wasn't a good punter. He was fine. But, you could have replaced him with anybody.
Well, I think that's the issue. Is you're down to the scraps at that point. I don't know if there's anybody else out there who would be better. It's
right. No, you're right.
And this is just the tough part about all this. And I don't know what's going on with Jack Jones and Jake Bailey over there. By the way, while we're talking about Bailey and the suspension there, I don't know. I don't really feel like we can comment on it too much without knowing more details because that's going to go through a whole process now. But yeah, and this is the second game of this season where the offense gave them a lead in the third quarter, and the defense did not get to take the field with the lead immediately after. The Minnesota game and this one, both of them chances where you could kind of swing the momentum and let we've talked all year about how the defense plays better when it has a lead and can kind of tee off. And I thought the defense mostly did a really good job of pressuring Josh Allen today. Josh Allen, side note here, Josh Allen is such a good player, and those deep passes he made, and I thought even on the play the Bills scored, I don't think the Patriots made a lot of bad plays on defense today. The Bills just made better ones.
Right.
And that's where it's all right, it does feel like, Jonathan Jones is a free agent this year. I don't think he played poorly. Is he worth bringing back at the price point, or do you take the opportunity and try to upgrade, or do you try to upgrade that position? You spend more on a better player there, because I think this team, it needs an elite player in that secondary somewhere, especially if Devin McCourty's done after this. Right. Whether you go for a free safety, whether you go for a corner, whether you sign Jonathan Jones and have him play safety, and you go sign another corner. I don't know what you do. I think you got options there, but you need somebody who can compete with Diggs if you want to compete in this division. And J.C. Jackson wasn't it, and Jonathan Jones is not it. And I think you might need to try somebody else.
I think John Jones pretty clearly showed all year he's not a number one corner. I think that's pretty clear. I think he's an okay player. Maybe he belongs more in the slot. I think he did okay on the outside this year. He wasn't awful. But he isn't a number one corner. Now, if he goes out to the market and people are underwhelmed and they're paying him money as if he is a slot corner / number two corner, I wouldn't hate paying that for him. I wouldn't hate that. but you have to bring in someone legit. You have to.
Mhm.
And so that, that's the thing for me is like, and you said it perfectly, like, especially without McCourty now, you have to have someone that, is an elite player. And I don't think Jones can play safety because he's not a good enough tackler. He's an okay
Yeah,
tackler, but he's not a good enough tackler. And so, like, I wouldn't mind bringing him back, but the price is going to have to be right because I'm not overpaying for him when I really need a number one corner. And can Jack Jones become that guy? I don't know. Maybe we saw some flashes from him, but he's got off-field issues. He had a problem with the team, so he got suspended during his rehab. He couldn't stay healthy all year long. So, like, now you start to wonder, like, is Jack Jones really that guy? I don't know if he is. And so, that's a big question mark. I wouldn't feel comfortable going into this year and running it back with, Jalen Mills, John Jones, and Jack Jones. I don't think anyone would be comfortable with that.
No, and I think you can have a good team with that secondary. I don't think you can have a great team with that secondary, and that's what we're going for here.
Yep.
And I like Jonathan Jones a lot. I will note too, this is back-to-back years. They go up to Buffalo, and Jalen Mills can't play in the game. I think he had COVID last year, if I'm remembering correctly, and now this year he's got that nagging groin injury. He didn't play after the Vikings game, if I'm remembering correctly.
Right.
So this may be it for him in a New England uniform, although he's under contract for, I think, the next 2 years at a pretty reasonable rate, probably around what Jonathan Jones would get, a little bit less than what Jonathan Jones would get signed for. And Mills is a fine player. I think at the end of the day, my personal preference here is you keep one of Jonathan Jones or Jalen Mills, depending on price and how you feel about the players and all that, like an internal decision. You let Jack Jones, and assuming they're still cool with him, and Marcus Jones play, and you get one other guy out there, and hopefully Jalen Mills is essentially your corner four. And I still think you can kind of take or leave Miles Bryant. He's going to be so cheap. I mean, Miles Bryant's going to be like maybe $1 million contract, and I don't know if you're going to get a better player for him than him at that price point. If he's your fifth corner and your fifth safety.
No.
Well, the issue today is
no, Matt, no. I don't care what the price is. I don't care if he's paying us to play. I do not want Miles Bryant on the team next year. Period.
I'm just putting it out there because we all know Bill Belichick, and I'm preparing people for the possibility that he is back.
No, he sucks. He does nothing good. Nothing. He doesn't do anything well. Nothing.
Well, he usually tackles well, apparently not in kick returns. But
so that's the thing. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, is he a good tackler? Well, yeah, but like he can't be expected to tackle someone in space. Okay, well, all right. Well, is he a good coverage guy? Well, no, he's not a good coverage guy. But like, I mean, he's like fine. Okay, well then does he play well on the run?
He's always in the right spot to not make the play.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. That's like the exact definition of it, right? He's in the right spot and just can't do anything about it. And like and even like the pass, and I know it was a good pass to Diggs or Gabe Davis down at the goal line. He had a shot at that ball and just missed it.
Yeah.
Just didn't get there in time. And you're like, man, like you're there. You're right there. Make a flipping play. And at some point, you have to look at it and say, you know what? I'll bring in someone else. I'll bring someone else in to do it because he obviously can't do it. And I think that, that to me is like, it's obvious that he can't do it. Peppers is a guy I would like to see back. He's on a, he's on an expiring deal, and he's not going to command a ton of money because he played a role. He's not necessarily a quote unquote every down starter. But, especially with McCourty leaving, it would really be nice to have, some of that veteran leadership that he brings. And he just plays so freaking hard that I would, I'd like to have him on the team as well. Now, he's on that kickoff coverage too, and didn't exactly cover himself in glory today, but it wasn't all bad. And I thought the first one, Reese kind of blamed the first one on him. I don't think the first one was on him. I think it was more on the contained guy. He was kind of, maybe he came back up, maybe come up too far. I don't know, and got pinned inside. But either way, that's the thing for me. It's like I'd still like to see him out there.
And especially if McCourty is going to be gone, I think you'd want Duggar, Phillips, and Peppers all under contract because that's going to make whoever that other free safety is a lot easier. And we'll see what happens with Josh Bledsoe, who I think they like him. He hasn't done a lot here, but he's also been buried on the depth chart behind veterans, and he'll be under contract, so he'll have a chance to earn a role next year.
Right.
Another guy I want to mention who will have a chance to earn a role is was Tay Hayes, who they had playing at corner today. He's under contract for next year. They signed him to a 2-year deal. So he'll play into that. He hasn't really stuck anywhere in the league, but he's another body that'll play into whoever ends up being in that conversation. I see Oliver here commenting, asking about moving Mills to free safety. I think Mills to free safety is absolutely a possibility. I think Jonathan Jones there is also, if they re-sign him, neither would be my first pick, but you can do a lot worse.
Correct. Yep. Correct. And, and I think that, the defense is a work in progress, but it's not awful. I think Barmore is a problem. He's a problem for opposing teams. I thought Uquale really played well down the stretch this year. He provided some solid today. He did. He made some really nice plays today, and he provided some solid pass rush on the inside. And then, of course, Uche really stepped up towards the end of the year. Didn't have a sack today, but he was in the backfield doing stuff, though he wasn't amazing. He was fine today. I think Judon, again, we saw that, he kind of lost a little bit of it this year, although he, he had a nice play. What did he? Oh, he forced the interception by McCourty today. Mm-hmm. And so, he has some plays. He wasn't as dominant as he was at the beginning of the year, but he still was a pretty good player. And so I think your front seven is good. And Juwan Bentley, I think Juwan Bentley played extremely well this year. I know he's a little bit limited, so he's not this all-world linebacker, but he's pretty solid. And
you don't need
the contract they have it at. Right. And for the contract they have it at is solid. The thing is that they really need a second linebacker that can do the things that Mack Wilson and Raekwon McMillan can do, but can actually do them well. Because neither of those guys can do them well, but they're the type of player that you need. They just can't actually do what you need them to do.
And I think Raekwon McMillan is a big candidate here to come back next year. Just on the type of deal, it's very cuttable in camp. Right. He's the type of guy who, if he makes the roster next year, would not shock me at all. Right. If he is in the first round of cuts, wouldn't shock me either. I think he's done a lot. I don't think he's fantastic. I think he's fine. And I think what we've seen from the defense all year, for the most part, is that it's a very good defense. It just like we kind of expected, it lacks that one guy in the secondary who can really make plays. Right. And that's, if you're able to get that guy and keep the rest of the defense mostly intact, then I think this can absolutely be a top 5, top 3, top 1 defense next season. And if you do that, you're going to have a chance.
And I would argue I think Kyle Duggar is a damn good player. Of course, he had 3 touchdowns this year. And so I would argue that, right, he takes kind of one more step up and he becomes an elite safety. He's okay in coverage. He's still not great in coverage, but he's okay in coverage. The problem is when he's going against those solid tight ends, he isn't good enough against those solid tight ends. He does have a nice job and does a nice job of kind of, being around the football, right? Mm-hmm. Really made a nice play on those things on the Carr interception where he, took that back to the house, read the screen and took that back to the house and did the same thing with Teddy Bridgewater, baited him into that throw and picked that off and took it back for touchdown as well. And so I think Oliver mentions too, like Duggar, Uche, and Onwenu getting signed to a long-term deal. I think he's right. I mean, I think that, it's one of those things that like you need to lock up Duggar, you need to lock up Uche, and you need to lock up Onwenu. They are your 3 best young players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you got to hope that Ramondre plays better than he did down the stretch this year. I mean, I don't know if he got
put another ball on the ground today.
Right. I don't know if he got tired or if he got hurt or what, but man, he was a shell of himself these last 4 games even. Like it was just something was off. And he was a great player for them when he was at 100%, when he was playing as well as he was early in the year. He was unbelievable. And then these last few games, he just wasn't that good. He was missing pass blocking assignments, and he even played today. He didn't even play. Damian Harris played the whole game basically, and of course Ramondre played a little bit, but like Damien
He
Harris
looked
played
good for
pretty
the
much
most
the
part when
whole
he
game.
played. He had some highlight reel runs today. It's just some of
Right.
the negatives. And I think
It's the nuance stuff.
I think for some of these guys we're talking about, Duggar, Uche, Onwenu, Ramondre, all have had like elite plays for stretches of this season. I think we've seen all four of those guys have some real low lights in
Yeah.
there too. And that's kind of the issue here is can you take another step next year and just clean up the low lights? I think we've seen, I mean, Duggar was the one who was supposed to contain the edge on the kickoff return to Minnesota, and he got held, but he also didn't
Right.
do anything to make the ref throw that flag. He didn't really try to fight through the block at all, and he's a
Yeah.
little bit he can be elite in coverage, but he is not elite snap to snap. He's very inconsistent there. That's his issue. Uche, I will say like that long touchdown. I think that was the one before the last one, the second to last touchdown that the Bills got.
The Diggs
I know we're
touchdown?
gonna. I, I don't remember who. No, the was it John Brown?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know Miles Bryant's gonna get a lot of hate for that, and he's part of that. But without seeing what the full coverage looks like on the back end, that's an improvised route. The only reason Josh Allen has any time to throw that is because Josh Uche does not contain, and Allen's able to get out of the pocket, and you're playing a zone defense. And sometimes there are busts in zone coverages because if a play goes too long, sometimes there's three guys downfield and you only had two downfield zones,
Right.
and people are looking at stuff, and it happens. It's football. So you need Uche to make a better play there. I thought Uche was much better in contain this year too. I thought he had two bad plays there today. Onwenu has had some issues with, I don't know. He's had a couple rough games this year, and yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be intrigued to see if they bring Damien Harris back. I think they're going to have a dollar amount for him. They're going to offer him a contract,
Yeah.
and they're going to say, "This is what we think you're worth. Go hit the free agent market." And if nobody offers you more, welcome back.
The complicated part is that that's a good question. And Oliver's asking about draft content. We will be doing a ton of draft content. We'll definitely be doing some draft streams for sure. Thank you for stopping by, Oliver. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming through. But yes, we'll definitely be doing some draft stuff. We're going to transition to draft pretty quickly because the season's over. So, but the Damien Harris question is interesting because, I think Kevin Harris looked good at times this year. He's a similar runner to Damien Harris. He's obviously not as good as Damien Harris is, but he's a similar player to Harris. You saw some good things out of Pierre Strong. Now, I think Pierre Strong is more of that. I don't want to say James White because he's really more of a running back. I don't think he's nearly as dynamic in the passing game as James White was, but he's more of that kind of change of pace back like James White was. So, maybe you see that from Pierre Strong, but it is a good question. I just don't know. They're certainly not going to extend for him because you have two good players behind him. There's no reason to pay him an exorbitant amount of money. You know what I mean? And especially with Ramondre in front, seeming to take that bell cow role. But again, if you feel like you can't trust Ramondre Stevenson to be that guy, maybe you do spend extra money on Damien Harris,
And I look at some of the inconsistencies you've seen with Ramondre there, and they mirror the communication issues we've seen with the rest of the offense. So I have to think we're going to see at least two new coordinators on this team next year, and one of those on offense, and maybe just better coaching helps. Another year in the system helps as a guy who is a really good pass protector when he's in the right place, and another year with more work, and he can work on some of the fumbles, and he can be an explosive back. You don't need Harris back. You welcome him back the right price point, but you don't need him.
Right. And the other question I have, and my dad was texting me about this as well, was about Marcus Jones. And the real question is, do you keep him on defense or do you switch him to offense and have him play offense, exclusively, or do you kind of have him keep playing both? I don't know. Right.
I think you have to have him on. I think you have to have him on defense just because he can be so good there.
Right.
He's a guy who I think, again, the size becomes the concern here, but he can be a safety. In the NFL today, it's also a lot of cover two stuff. So you're going to have two safeties back,
right?
But you like to disguise and you like to mix it up. So having a Jalen Mills and a Marcus Jones at corner means that if you want to throw something funky out there, you can have the two of them line up at corner, then drop back and play safety. And the two safeties are going to come up and play where the corners were playing and switch stuff. And I think he's really good at that. So I think you keep packages for him on offense. I think you keep that going, but you want him to develop at corner.
Right. Yeah, I tend to agree with you because, if he can do both, I think you should kind of let him do both. And I don't know. I see a little bit of Tyreek in him, which is insane to say because Tyreek is ridiculous and he's doesn't have quite the speed that Hill has. I guess maybe it's just his size and kind of his look.
Mhm.
But to me, I don't know. I don't know how you look at that and you look at him and say like, yeah. I think overall, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think overall you let him do what he's good at, and it seems like he's good at a lot of those things. So I'd kind of let him keep playing both. And Dark Blue Gold says too, it's too early in his career to commit one way or the other, and I agree. Like
Yeah.
let him play both, and then if he really starts to struggle on defense and is killing on an offense, maybe you say, all right, screw it, we'll just switch him to offense exclusively, or the other way around. If he's not great on offense, then you leave him on defense, or if he can't handle both, which it seems like he's going to be able to if he can handle it as a rookie. Um,
Mhm.
then you got to try to scale back. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
it's a good
yeah.
question about Jones.
I have a question for you and then a couple updates here. What
Let's hear
number
it.
does Brian Hoyer wear?
5, I think.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because this offseason now presents a really nice opportunity for Marcus Jones to slide into a single digit number, which I think
Ooh,
I think a number 5 Marcus Jones could look nice.
that would
I
be
could
cool.
Yeah.
That would be
The
cool.
last
I would be upset because I own
your
a
jersey.
25 Marcus Jones jersey. Although I wonder if they probably wouldn't. So they do a jersey exchange if a guy changes his number or does something else. But because I custom ordered this one, I don't know if they would do that for
Probably not.
me. Probably
And
not,
then well
right?
then you have something cool there. Then you got something that's a little bit different. I like
I
that. You got
guess.
the special
Yeah.
rookie
The
year Marcus
original.
Jones.
The original
Yeah.
Marcus Jones, yeah.
Yeah. A couple updates here. One, I was wondering if David Andrews might consider retirement. He said right after in his press conference, he basically led off by saying, "I'm working for next season," so he'll be back.
Yep.
McCourty said he's still weighing his options. He said he has a
Right.
lot to think about. I think this is basically what he said last year too. So I would not rule out McCourty coming back, um, and I don't think he would be super expensive
Yeah.
anyway.
I
So
agree.
I don't think we can assume he retires. I think it's more likely than not he does, but I think it's close enough to 50-50 that we just kind of go in and see what happens. Slater, it sounds a lot more like he's done, just from the tone of his press conference and what I can see. And Jacoby Myers just got asked if he'd like to be back in New England next season, and his answer was definitely.
Right.
And I think you got to bring him back.
You have to. You just have to. He made that catch in the back of the end zone was a ridiculous catch, and he seems to do that every few weeks where he'll just have an insane catch like that, and you just kind of like stand there and shake your head, and you're like, how the heck does this guy keep doing it? And he's not the traditional player. He's not a Julian Edelman. He's not a Devontae Parker. He's not a Stephon Diggs. Not someone like that. But man, he's good. He's good. He's a gamer. He's a baller. He goes out there and plays his butt off. And I just feel like you gotta, you gotta bring him back.
Mhm.
And and so we'll see. But I'd be very upset if they didn't bring him back. Now,
Mhm.
we got to get to the two biggest stories in my opinion, because this is where the Patriots fans, this is where we start to sound stupid. This is where we start to sound dumb. We start to sound stupid, okay? Because we start to talk about Bill Belichick and how Bill sucks and how Bill doesn't get it done and how Bill isn't the guy and so on and so on and so on. And I just I I genuinely don't understand what people are watching. I genuinely don't understand this team. I just don't. I'm like almost at a loss for words because I can't imagine feeling that Belichick has lost it, or that he's a terrible GM, or that he's a terrible head coach, or and listen, if you want to blame him for putting Matty P in as offensive coordinator, I got no problem with that. That's a bad decision by him. It was a bad decision by him. I think he thought he could do it, and he obviously couldn't. And so he's going to rectify that this year. He's going to. I think there's no doubt that he's going to. He's basically said that, already. But then the other one is that, like, it's Bill freaking Belichick. Like, he gives them an opportunity and a chance to win every single game. And you can argue and say, well, no, he doesn't. Yeah, he does. He does.
Yeah,
And
he's
so,
good at this. I mean,
right.
let's look at that. We all talked after the playoff game last year about how bad the defense was against Buffalo. Look at the two games this year. defense was much better against Buffalo than it
Right.
was in either of the games in regular weather conditions last year. I think they
Yep.
adjusted incredibly well to
Right.
Josh Allen, and Josh Allen is just really good. The answer there is you need better players, not better coaching.
Correct.
And if I told you before the season, if I told you back in August that Mac Jones is going to miss, what was it, 3.5 weeks essentially there, and you're going to be down to offensive tackle 6 or whatever McDermott is,
Right.
and you're going to have basically all of your receivers miss time with injury at different points. And Kyle Duggar is going to miss time. Barmore is going to miss a huge stretch of the season. Jalen Mills is going to basically miss the whole back half of the season. If I told you all of that and said this team still ends up within one game, if we're being realistic, one play in Las Vegas away from
Right.
being in the playoffs, I think we'd all say, all right, well, that's pretty impressive. So it stinks to watch, but part of this hurts to watch so much because we've seen like a lot of games here where the team really should have had a chance to win, and it gets close, and then it doesn't make the play. And that's on
Right.
coaching, but I don't think that's on Bill Belichick head coaching. I think that's on the people he hired, which is still his responsibility, but it's
Correct.
maybe the first bad hire of his entire coaching tenure.
Right. Well, and I wonder, you look at it and you say, we were talking about it before the show, Green Bay, Minnesota, Vegas today, and there was one other one, the Baltimore. Though
I
that's
think
5
you could
games.
throw the Chicago game in there as it wasn't close, but that should have been a very winnable game.
I thought that was more. I thought that was about not playing. I wouldn't have played Mac in that game, and I was pissed about that one. But for me, I looked at it and said, all right, those 5 games. Well, say one of those goes your way, you're in the playoffs. If 2 of those go your way, you're finishing this season 10-6 or 10-7, and you're
a three-way tie with the Chargers and the Ravens.
Right. Right. And so that's the stuff where it's like, that's if 2 of those games go your way, just 2. And so, it wasn't always perfect, but the coaching is set up and you say, okay, well, yeah, but like we used to make those plays and it was all Brady. Well, I mean, like, yeah, the players were better. You're telling me that Edelman, Gronk, and Brady aren't better than any players that are on this team right now? You're telling me that guys like Rodney Harrison and guys like Darrelle Revis and, guys like Vince Wilfork and guys like Donta Hightower, you're telling me those guys weren't difference makers, that they didn't change the game, that they didn't win? Like, they won games for the Patriots. Like, of course they did. Those guys were amazing for the Patriots. And so, yes, it has stuff to do with the coaching, for sure. It also has to do with the players as well, because the talent of the players aren't as good. And you say, well, that's on Belichick too, because yeah, okay, fine. Yes, blame Belichick. Sure, blame him for everything. But the fact is that the coaching, the players aren't as good. And yes, the coaches maybe aren't as good either. But the fact is that, like, we're still doing this. We're still there. The fact is they still have those games, those 5 or 6 games. They were in those games with an opportunity to win, and they couldn't do it, right?
Yeah. And I think you should rightfully criticize Bill Belichick for some of the drafting, especially late in Tom Brady's time in New England. Right. You should also give him the praise for what I think has been a couple really good drafts in a row now. A lot of this is going to be, I think, determined by what we see in year 3 for Mac Jones and for Christian Barmore. That is going to entirely determine how that draft looks. Because I think Mac can be a franchise guy. I think when he was protected this year and the offense actually had any kind of a rhythm, he looked about as good as the player we saw last year, which I think is still a little bit disappointing to not see improvement. But hey, I assume we're going to see a different offensive coordinator and some changes to the offensive personnel next year. Let's see what the offseason looks like. He's going to get year 3, and this is going to determine if he's the guy or not, really. Right. And I think what we also saw today is that, like, this receiving core is without Aguilar. The other 4, who I thought they managed the snaps at receiver really well today. By the way, everybody was getting looks.
I agree.
That's a receiving core that's good enough to compete with some of the best teams. Maybe not good enough to win, but good enough to compete, which tells me, well, you're a body away in that receiving group, in that skill group, whether that's at receiver or tight end. And I will say, I actually think a tight end helps a ton. I'm totally in the camp of just eating the money on Jonnu and getting rid of him and not having him on the team next year.
No point in having
Hunter Henry, I could take or leave. You free up some space not a massive amount by getting rid of him. I think he's probably worth. I could take or leave Hunter Henry, but where they're going to pick in the draft, they're going to have a shot to pick a tight end, and potentially a good one, and maybe their best shot at tight end since drafting Gronk and Hernandez. Like these are guys who are better prospects than Asiasi and Dalton Keene ever were. If you nail a pick there and you get a tight end who can have any impact in his first year, then
Right.
I think the way this offense looks changes pretty dramatically.
Well, you're not wrong, but I think that's a second or third round pick at the highest because you have to spend that. No, you have to spend that first round pick on an offensive lineman. You just have to, unless you go out and spend big on an offensive lineman. But I don't think there's anyone out there.
I mean, I would generally agree with you, except for the fact that, I mean, you can bring Connor McDermott and Trent Brown back next year, and these guys aren't good. But the offensive line we saw today, it wasn't great, but that was probably still an above average offensive line performance. You can bring back all five that played today and probably spend, I don't know, your second and third round picks on offensive tackles, and hopefully one of them turns out to be good. If there's a tight end you like in that first round that you think can be a difference maker, I think you take him. I think I don't think Atlanta would ever move him, but I think you have to call the Falcons and ask what's going on with Kyle Pitts with his usage this year. I don't think they move him, but if they say, yeah, we don't like his development, we'll send him to New England for a second, I think you do that. And
absolutely.
Yeah, like so we'll see what the offseason looks like. There's always weird things that happen, and I think if coaching fixes a lot of the consistency issues we saw with this team, you can get the team you saw against Baltimore, against Minnesota, against Buffalo in this one for a full season. And if coaching can kind of give you that game in, game out consistency, then you're, I don't know, a player on offense and a player defense away from being a top 5 team in the AFC if things go your way.
Right. Well, they were also close with Cincinnati too. I had forgotten about Cincy as well.
Yes.
So that was a close game too. So you just, and again, you're not going to win all those games, but even if you win 2, right? Even win 2 of those games. And I do think
you win 1 year in the playoffs.
Correct. Right. And that's really what it comes down to. Right. So, and again, is it coaching, as a players? We don't know. Right. But I think it is a good conversation. I will say, I do believe that the Patriots should not, I can't at 14 or 15. Well, so there is, so just so we can talk about the draft pick here. Someone tweeted this out. Washington, Detroit win today. Patriots get the 14th pick. Washington wins and Detroit loses, they get the 15th pick. And if Washington and Detroit both lose, they get the 16th pick. So
who does Washington play?
Washington's playing the Cowboys right now, but I don't know if the Cowboys are playing their starters. Washington was up 7-0 on the Cowboys. Still are up 7-0 on the Cowboys. I don't know.
Sam Howell playing, right?
They do have Sam Howell playing. Oh, and Dak's playing. So I guess they're playing all their guys. I guess technically they can still get up to that seed, but you never know. If Washington can somehow pull it out.
Pick here? Yeah, right. That's 16th pick is fine. I mean, you're right in the neighborhood where they got Mac, which I don't think I assume you're not looking for a quarterback here. I think we kind of are where we were at the start of the year, which is we're not convinced Mac's the guy. We're not convinced he isn't the guy. I want to see more. So I don't think you're looking for a quarterback now. I think you're looking for help.
Well, I think the biggest issue. No, go ahead. I
think you also have to consider just who is available for your first round pick in the trade market too. Obviously, you want to get a guy under contract who's a rookie with all the control and all that. But at the same time, this defense is good right now, especially if McCourty comes back and you sign a corner and you get a Jamel Dean or whatever, and you think this defense can be a top 3 unit again next year, and you fix up the special teams, you get the right coordinators. This team can win right now if you get a guy. And if you think you can trade a first for a guy who can have a similar impact to what Stephon Diggs or Tyreek Hill has done, you have to at least consider it. I don't know if that is going to be out there, but if you think it is, you have to think about it.
I agree with you, and we'll see if that happens or not. But the other guy I want to talk about is Mac Jones, because I think Mac is getting, and I think the way you said it was perfect. That I don't know if he's the guy. I genuinely don't. I thought at the end of the year last year, I was like, all right, seems like he's the guy. Let's see what happens this year. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how I feel about Mac Jones. Now, look, I thought he played exceptionally well today for the most part. Not every throw was perfect. Not everything was great. Of course, Josh Allen had some bad plays today too, and Josh Allen's the best quarterback in the NFL. So like, he had some bad plays today. Patrick Mahomes has some bad plays every game. Like, he's gonna have some bad throws. He's going to. Sorry, people. Like, that's just gonna happen because he's an NFL quarterback. But I think overall he played well today. I think that the first interception on Aguilar, now, he probably should have made a better decision, but he's trusting that Aguilar is going to beat White, which he didn't, and then he gave up on the play too because White had positioning on him.
Oh, and it's not even trusting that he's gonna win or whatever. It's trusting that he's gonna have a shot at it. And Aguilar was so badly beaten on that he didn't have a shot.
Right. And so you just say like, okay, fine. All right, should have done better on that one. But the Hunter Henry one, and certainly the Damian Harris one, I mean, the throw ends up behind Harris because Jones gets hit as he's throwing, right? I mean, like, you're going to blame that on him, and then what? He tips it up like 10 feet up into the air and it gets picked off? Like, that's on Mac Jones? Like, come on. And the Hunter Henry one is he's trying to make a play. Tony Romo was talking about checking it down. What the hell's picking up 6 yards on 3rd and 19 going to do? Now it's 4th and 13. You're still in the red zone. You're still close to the goal line. What the hell good is that? It doesn't. Would you be in the same position? So he's trying to make a play, and Henry tips it, gets picked off in the end zone. It's just like those things happen. And by the way, Josh Allen had a play earlier in the game where it would have been a pick six. It would have been a pick six, and Dawson Knox leaped up into the air, ripped the ball down with one hand, and came down with it instead of tipping it up the air for the Patriots to return back for a touchdown or missing it completely.
Catch.
It was a great catch. And so sometimes you just need your guys to make a play. And that's where you need far too players. Often the Patriots haven't done that.
Yeah. And it's like you look at all 3 Mac picks. I think he bears at least some share of the responsibility for all 3. I would not say the majority of the responsibility for any of the 3. I think the first one, like you said, it could have been a better throw and could have been a better decision. But I mean, that's the second time this year where he's basically thrown that same thing, and it's been a pick. One to Parker on the first drive of the season, and then this one where you just expect the receiver to make a better play on the ball. That's a pick maybe 5% of the time, and it's really only a pick when the receiver messes up. If that's an incompletion, that's on that should be an incompletion in all likelihood, and you can blame Mac for that if you want. But a pick, I don't think it's fair to say that's all on Mac. The one over the middle, I think you'd like to see Mac make a better throw to Hunter Henry. I think he missed him by a little bit.
Right.
But you're not going to make every throw. I think he made some nice throws in this game. It's a little bit unlucky that it's a pick, and he could have made a better throw to Harris. But again, Harris decides to, I don't know, pretend like it's a balloon about to hit the floor, and he's playing with his cousins in the living room trying to keep a balloon up, and throws it to the Bills. So you put it all, that's the interceptions don't reflect how he played. I think the other thing, there was the one good special teams play where you force the Bills to touch the ball and recover it.
Right.
That doesn't happen. They never get to that situation if Parker doesn't let a ball go off his head. Right. Can we talk about that play? You've got Josh Allen is slinging it, and Mac Jones responds with a dot down the field, like a perfect deep throw to Parker, and he can't haul it in. And you got to make that catch. And that's, again, it's one of those. If Parker and Myers and Thornton are all kind of your collective wide receiver 2, and Bourne's your spark plug off the bench, and you got a better wide receiver 1 out there, you feel better about this. But Parker's the guy who's got to make that play right now, and that's why I said this receiving core is good enough to compete but not win, because Parker didn't make that catch, and you saw Diggs and John Brown and guys like that, they did make that play. And I also don't think that's a shock looking at the history of their careers. That is who they are. So
yeah. That's true. And I think that's kind of what it all comes back to, is that you got to have better players around him. And I think the big thing with me and Mac is that, again, you just don't know. You went into this season not knowing if he was the guy, but hoping he'd take a step. Then he didn't take a step up this year, but I thought he played much better down the stretch. Now, of course, I'm sorry. You're right, Mac and me. You're right. It is. That's a hell of a poll right there. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that movie, but
Isn't that the one that Paul Rudd would always bring up when he was on?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, with the kid in the wheelchair falling off the cliff and Yep. But anyways, it's one of those things where I look at it and just say, we don't know. We don't know yet, right? We're not sure about him. Now I'm less sure than I was at the end of last year, because you didn't know what you saw. Was the responsibility of him, is the real Mac Jones what we saw in the middle of the year where he was struggling, or the beginning and middle of the year where he was struggling? Whereas the real Mac Jones at the end of the year, when we saw some good things from him, what do you have? He had 11 touchdowns and 4 interceptions at the end of the year, and the last 8-9 games or whatever after he came back after the Bears game, he had 11 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. And again, we talked about the 3 today. Like I don't know. Like I'm not sure. And so I think we have to give him another year with an actual offensive coaching staff. I mean, look at how many times they run play action today. They may have run play action today more than they've run play action all season long combined. And they just refuse to run play action. And Mac's really good at running play action, and they just refuse to do it. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, wait, you mean play action's like good? Oh, we should do that more often. Right. We freaking doing it all year last year, and we stopped doing it this year.
And you know what allowed them to do it too is the guys executed. Part of play action, you have to get yourself into a position where the defense is ever going to buy that you're running the ball, and that comes from both being able to run a little bit, although run doesn't always set up play action. The other part is you move the ball, you get to the middle of the field, you pick up first downs. It just creates more opportunities. It creates faith from the offensive coaches in the line to be able to block for stuff like that. They blocked all of that stuff really well today. The line, the exception of a couple of plays and maybe the first series, I thought the line was very, very good today. I will also note when you have 2 kickoff returns go against you, you kind of lose the ability to complain about the officiating. But I will note there were 2 different possessions there where the Patriots got into first and longs. One of them was on a questionable or a really long distances. One of them was on the questionable offensive pass interference, which I actually didn't mind the call, but Tony Romo was incensed by.
Yeah.
And the complete whiff of the offsides penalty early in the game, which would have been 1st and 5 instead of 2nd and 16.
Right.
On a series like that, with how the offense was looking, I feel like I would feel pretty good about them getting yards in a situation like that and maybe points. And
and that that OPI, I'm sorry to cut you off. That OPI, sets up that Hunter Henry interception where it's like, it just
and a born drop also set that up. I think is important to know.
Well, even he catches that, he picks up, and what's funny is that Romo's talking about on the next play how to check down. He already tried to check down, right? That's probably a 5, 6, maybe 7-yard gain, and now you're looking at 3rd and 12 instead of 3rd and 19, and it's like, well, that makes a big difference. But again, if Henry doesn't get called for that penalty, it's 2nd and 2 or 2nd and 3 or whatever it was, so like those things make a difference. When you miss some of those calls, I was surprised that they didn't get the call on the Damian Harris pass, which I know was underthrown, but I'm fairly certain, and I have to look at it again, but I'm fairly certain that Devontae Parker ran to the corner of the end zone, the back corner of the end zone. Mm-hmm. And so you couldn't put it over his shoulder because Devontae Parker's standing there with the defender. So you have to throw it underneath and either hope A, Harris goes and gets it, or B, you get the call, and you should have gotten the call there, and you didn't,
Yeah, and I will also say I do want to be fair here in that the interception that they got before the half, I thought they got very lucky to not get a roughing the passer penalty against them, with Judon coming in incredibly low on Josh Allen.
He was blocked. He was blocked and was falling. So that's the only thing against it. But
and at the end of the day,
but I could see them calling it. I could definitely see them calling it.
At the end of the day, most of these calls are 50-50, except for the offsides. The offsides was particularly egregious, and I wouldn't really have problems with any of the other stuff for the most part. It's again, if you give up 2 kick returns for a touchdown, you deserve to lose that game.
Correct.
As a Michigan fan, also, I'm sitting here with Michigan's last game being one where you throw 2 pick sixes and that ends up being the difference, and this is one where you give up 2 kick return touchdowns and that ends up being the difference, and I'm a little bit traumatized. But it's
frustrating, and it's a hard way to end the season because you felt like, I mean, it was something crazy. You felt like, okay, they have no shot today. My thought process going in, I was telling people all week they're going to lose by 40. Like they just, with Hamlin being okay and them being back in it and them feeling like, hey, we really have a shot here. It's hard, right? To now lose this game, and you're like, man, like, or to come out and play the way they played. I thought it was great. And you have that opportunity where you look at it and say, all right, I thought the Bills were going to kill us. But really, it's because you give up 2 kick return touchdowns. I mean, if you tell me you lose the Bills because you gave up That's the difference in the game, is giving up 2 kick return touchdowns and then kicking one out of bounds is the difference in the game. I think the Patriots offense outplayed the Bills offense today, which is
They
insane to think
they
about.
outscored them. It's 23-21 with just offense and defense out there.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, that's crazy. Um, they played the game, and it's, if your perspective on this is you want to have optimism for next season, but also a third place schedule and a higher draft pick, then today was about the best possible outcome for you.
Yep.
And I totally get that. Like,
The only way it
that,
could have been better is if the Jaguars had lost last night, and then you would have dropped one spot further down. Beyond that, this is the best possible outcome you could have had today.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll take it. We have a sliver of optimism here. It's funny. We made the playoffs last year, and we didn't this year. But both seasons ended in Buffalo. And when it comes to immediate feelings after the game, I feel a lot better right now than I did, especially knowing, like, I feel, I have no actual information on this, but I feel very strongly that Bill O'Brien will be the offensive coordinator next year.
Yeah.
Would not be surprised to see him be OC and quarterbacks coach at the same time, which I think would be good for Mac. I'll
Agreed.
also note, like, there's Alabama's, I think it's their wide receiver coach and assistant head coach or assistant OC or whatever, who's been there for a little bit, who was there when Mac was there and helped develop some of those guys. He's the type of guy who I could also see coming along. And all right, well, now Troy Brown can go over to be a special teams coach, and Joe Judge will go with him, and they can replace. And Bill O'Brien comes in, he brings a guy from Alabama who can coach the receivers, and that guy already has familiarity with Mac, and
Right. Yep.
all of a sudden, that alone, you put Matt Patricia up in the booth, you really haven't made a lot of changes, and I feel a lot better about the coaching staff.
100%. 100%. I just think moving on from Acord and Matty P as offensive coordinator is a massive upgrade. And if you can upgrade it to someone like Bill O'Brien, and listen, Bill O'Brien gets a lot of hate from a lot of people. He wasn't very good in Houston, and really a lot of it was his personality and kind of the way he handled things down there. But let's not forget that he made the playoffs with, like, the worst quarterbacks ever. So, like, he figured out a way to coach those guys up and have them play pretty well. And so, I mean,
he was a good coach, just not a good GM.
Correct. Right.
And he wasn't more than a good coach. He wasn't a great coach, but he was a good coach.
Correct. And I think, some coaches can be good offensive coordinators and they can't be good head coaches. And maybe he's one of those guys that he's not a good head coach, but he's a good offensive coordinator. And, and I think if you have that, then you feel a lot better about it. And then again, now you look at it and say, okay, now we know. We have to make a decision about Mac Jones next offseason. We're going to give him a year with Billy O. And if that wide receiver coach comes over and, and he has some familiarity with him, you look at it and say, okay, that's interesting. Now we give ourselves an opportunity where we can look at it and say, this is squarely on Mac Jones. We know the coaching is set up okay. We try to put some better players around him. We feel better about this. Great. Now what can Mac do? And if Mac plays similar to what he did this year, then you don't pick up the fifth option and you move on. And is he ever going to be Josh Allen? No, he's never going to be Josh Allen. He's never going to be Deshaun Watson. He's never going to be, Patrick Mahomes. He's never going to be Aaron Rodgers. He's never going to be any of those guys. And we know that. You know that right now. But that doesn't mean he can't be a good player.
He can be Joe Burrow.
Right. Right. And that's the funny thing is that, he has a lot similar things that Joe Burrow has. He has similar, arm strength. I think Burrow's arm is a little bit stronger than his is, but he has similar arm strength to Joe Burrow. He has similar movement skills to Joe Burrow, right? Like, so he has some of those things. Burrow has significantly better coaching on the offensive side of the football and significantly better talent on the offensive side of the football as well. And so those things make a huge difference, right? And so if you can give Mac some more weapons, listen, I mean, if you're drafting in the top 15, maybe, JSN is available right there, right? Jackson Smith Enigma, and you draft that guy, right? And so now you look at it and say, shoot, we got some real talent there,
I will say I did watch. I have only barely started to look at draft film. I was actually not a big JSN fan watching his tape, although I know he was injured this year. I only watched this year. I'll have to go back. I think my issue with him, if we're talking specifics, is that he would be too much overlap with Myers, and we end up with just another wide receiver too, and I don't know how much that helps.
Right.
Just a couple notes here. One, that name of that coach was Holman Wiggins at Alabama. That I'm just throwing a name out there. No idea if he would come.
No,
No
right.
idea if this
Of
is
course
being
not.
discussed. But
Yeah,
just
yeah,
something I'd
yeah.
throw out there.
I like it.
Another note today. I did think the offensive coaching staff did mostly a good job today.
Yeah.
I really liked the QB draw that they called. Mac is athletic enough to do that. He's not like, this isn't early career Tom Brady when it comes to athleticism. He is
Right.
faster than that. He can run the ball. He can scramble. He can at least try to do stuff out of schedule. And I liked that they tried something different there. And I
And he
think
picked up,
a couple of yards. He got down to like the
I
one
was
or
gonna
the
say,
two
they
and set
picked
up.
up like 4 yards, right?
Yeah. And that's just, if he can do that, he doesn't have to be great, but if he can do that, threaten it in the red zone, it helps
Right.
you. And
Right.
they emptied. This offense clearly can be good when everybody's on the same page. The talent's there to be good. And if the defense can be great and the special teams can be like average NFL special teams, this is a playoff team. They just made too many mistakes this year, and injuries piled up, and bad coaching and bad details. And it's really astonishing how kind of bad this team was in so many respects and how close it came to get into the playoffs. They should, like, you should,
Yeah.
to an extent, you should feel bad about some of the decisions made coming into the season, but feel good about the fact that they came so close despite having that many issues.
Right. Right. And it's the complete opposite of what you normally see, right? You normally
Mhm.
sit there and say, man, these other teams are so stupid and the Patriots are so smart. And it was just the opposite. It was just the opposite with the Patriots. Bad situational football, big mistakes in huge moments. And it happened over and over and over again. And listen, a lot of that's on the players. You have to give some of that to the players. But the fact is that, you have to have better coaching, right? And someone was saying that, Bill Belichick has an old quote about whether, either you're coaching it or you're allowing it. And, so yeah, maybe you're not coaching them up. Maybe you want them to do better. But the fact is, if they're not, that's on you for not having them do better, right? And so that's some of that stuff where you can kind of look at it and say, like, all right, we got some issues here. So we'll see. We'll see. There's a long off season to go. Obviously, the rest of the NFL season is still going. We're going to stay with you probably, I would think. We're definitely going to have a show this week, and I would think we'll kind of continue going. We're going to have some fun this offseason, though. We're going to do some weird things. We're going to kind of go outside the box a little bit. We're going to talk about some scheduling stuff. We're going to be all over the place, and so it's going to be fun. We're going to kind of try to have some fun with it. Of course, we'll do a bunch of draft stuff. I'm not sure if any of the draft specials will be back, although they might. We will not do a naked podcast. I promise. Don't worry, Dark Google.
Aww.
But it'll be interesting. It'll be fun, and I think we can have some fun with it, and we can talk about it. And again, we're gonna get into the draft. Now, listen here. The real question everyone should be asking is, who is my guy of this year's draft going to be? Because here's the thing, okay? In 2020, I had 2 guys in the draft. 2 guys, Kayvon Wallace, who I don't know if he's doing anything in Philadelphia, but I had Kayvon Wallace and I had Jalen Hurts. Those are my 2 guys that I loved. Jalen Hurts, pretty good. Not too bad. He's worked out okay. My guy in the 2021 draft was Nick Bolton, who I freaking love Nick Bolton so much. And he's been a fantastic middle linebacker for the Chiefs. And, it was a Pro Bowl this year. And my guy in the 2022 draft was Marcus Jones. So the question is, who's going to be my guy this year? And will the Patriots draft him again, or will he turn out to be a stud like the last 3 guys that I've had? So Kayvon Wallace, maybe not so much on Kayvon Wallace, but the other 3, I'll take the dub on those ones, and kind of go for. I mean, obviously, when I say my guy, I mean like Trevor Lawrence was everyone's guy. We all know this, right? But I mean, like a guy outside the first round. Or maybe hovering around that first gun. And my guy, Dark Blue Gold, you're so right. You're so true. Trey Nixon is my guy for now until forever, though I can't take any credit for him during the draft process. It was only after he was drafted that Trey Nixon became my guy. So I can't take credit for any of the prospecting on Trey Nixon.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Trey Nixon next year. We'll see if he's even on the camp roster. Hopefully he can do something. I have some optimism there.
Yeah.
I just want another note here because I wasn't able to come on the show during the week to talk about like the DeMar Hamlin situation and stuff too.
Right.
That was, as somebody, I mean, he's my age. Like we are the same age, and watching that is very scary. I've been following all week. I'm so happy to see that he's doing better, and it was nice after how scary a night Monday night was. Be able to just sit back and watch football yesterday and today and enjoy it. And especially now that he's doing better, you don't feel bad about it, and there's nothing hanging over your head. And I don't. Obviously, the Bills are our rival, but it was nice to play today as a football rivalry where it was two teams just playing football against each other and getting to have fun doing it. And I'm happy for the city of Buffalo that they kind of got their moment. And I mean, those fans have been through a lot this year. I got nothing against them as people here, only as sports fans. So I'm glad that they get that moment, and they got the storybook with the kick return right off the bat. So it's a cool moment for them, and
I agree.
Made me the fact that they got that moment too made me feel a little bit better about trying to beat them too. They got their moment. All right, now let's go play football.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's funny. I feel like, had the Patriots, and I felt like this all week, like I felt like the Patriots were going to lose, but if there was one team to win when literally the entire country was rooting for the Bills, like the entire country outside of New England is rooting for the Bills, and for the Patriots with Belichick to go in there and win just would have been hilarious, because everyone would be like, screw the Patriots, what the hell, you know what I mean? Like, and so that would have been awfully funny. Now obviously it didn't happen, but that would have been awfully funny, and they almost pulled it off. And
there was that point in the game before the first pick that Mac threw when you're driving to start the second half, and after you got the pick, where it felt like they can do this. And that was the same feeling they had after the touchdown in the Minnesota game to go ahead before the kick return touchdown. Like it was the same thing in both games.
Yeah.
And I if there's one thing also from this team, like we talk about all the what ifs and the so closes, and at the end, that's who this team was. You are what your record says you are. How many games did we see where this team had a chance to make a play to win and didn't do it? And we can also talk about the offense in the Baltimore game. But the other thing with the Baltimore game was they had a chance to get a stop late and could not do it. Right. They had a chance to get a stop late against the Bills, could not do it. They had a chance to get a stop against the Raiders, and with a little help from the officials, could not do it. Yeah. And it's a team game. Everybody's got to come together to win these. And again, like you are what your play dictates you are. They had so many chances to make the plays and really just never made them. And the lesson you get from that end of things is you need to get playmakers somehow.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, and they have some, just not enough. Yeah. Right? Not enough.
Don't let anybody fool you into thinking that the Patriots are a bad team right now, because they're not. They aren't a good team, but they aren't a bad team either. They are somewhere in the middle. I think we saw it today. Like most teams aren't gonna be able to go up to Buffalo in that environment and play with the Bills. And I think the coaching was excellent today, and preparation was excellent, and you let a couple plays get away from you, and that's the ball game. But I feel better about this right now than I did after the Patriots lost to the Ravens in 2009 in the playoffs, which is kind of crazy, except for the quarterback position. Obviously, you have Tom Brady, that changes things, but you didn't get really killed or anything out there. You played a good game. You were respectable, and for the most part, this team didn't have. Apart from that one game against the Raiders, they didn't have moments that were like truly, truly embarrassing and awful. And they played good football. They probably averaged playing about 30 minutes of good football a game this year.
Right, that's true, and that's some of the stuff for me where I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know how you look at this. By the way, Washington's currently winning 13-0 over the Cowboys, which I don't know how it's possible. But pick six. That's how. Of course, PAT was no good, but nevertheless, hey, 13-0. I mean, I'm cool with it. So, anyways, it just that's what makes it frustrating, to be honest. And it is against the Dallas Starters. You're right, Dark Blue Gold. Like they're trying to win this game and losing 13-0.
Because Dallas has a chance at the 1 seed. If Dallas wins and somehow the Giants backups beat the Eagles, then Dallas gets the 1 seed. I'm pretty sure.
Right. You're right. You're right. Philadelphia is already up 13-0 in the red zone, so it doesn't really matter to them. But nevertheless,
looks like Dallas is heading to Tampa, and Tampa beat them already this year.
Man, that's so Tampa finishes 8-9 this year. They didn't play. Did Brady even play today? I don't know if Brady played. He did play today. I mean, he threw 80. He had 84 yards passing. So, and Blaine Gabbert played. Yeah, like they didn't really care. They didn't start most of their starters. So they didn't really care about this game. Imagine the Cowboys. Oh my God. be so sweet if the
That could-
Cowboys went down
yeah.
to Tampa and lost.
One of
That'd be
these
so
4
awesome.
or 7 seeds between the Jags and the Bucks, and I don't think the Dolphins are going into Buffalo and winning, especially if Tua can't play. I
But
don't
you
think
never
that's
know.
happening.
You
never
never
know.
know.
I don't think that'll happen. And what's the other? We don't know the 7 in the NFC yet, but I
No,
think
not
they're going to
yet.
have a shot depending on who the 2 is.
Man, if it's the Packers versus the Vikings, oh my God. I
Yeah.
mean, who isn't picking Who isn't picking the Packers in that game? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins in a game against the Packers that matters that you just start and they got blown out last week.
Yeah. And
Man.
hopefully this take doesn't age too poorly for people who are listening to this tomorrow after all of this. But the Lions decided to wear their all white uniforms, like the plain white pants, plain white socks with their white jerseys. They're going into Green Bay dressed as a white flag. They're going in dressed as a team that surrenders. So yeah, have fun with that one.
It's not
Also,
ideal.
I just another note as to how much things can change in an off season, or not change, but just like how fickle the NFL can be.
Yeah.
We're all talking about McDaniels and the issues in Las Vegas and all that, and how the team, they were almost a playoff team last year, 10-7 last year, and really fallen out this year. Or were they 11-6 last year? Yeah, 11-6.
I think so, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the Raiders are 4 games worse this season than they were last year, with a better point differential. They scored more points and allowed less points this year than they did last year, and they're 4 games worse.
It's crazy.
That's how the NFL goes.
Yep. And that's just,
And
it just is what it is sometimes, right?
And Jakob Johnson played almost as many snaps for them as Hunter Renfro and Darren Waller each did because of the injuries they had.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they had some real struggles. I do think McDaniel's going to be okay eventually, but
I don't know if he's a good coach. I don't think you can point to this year and say he's a bad coach.
Right. I agree. So, all right, so let's get out of here. I think.
Do we want to take a look at who the opponents are going to be for next year, real quick, since that's being finalized?
Okay, so yes, Ben Volen tweeted this out already. I think it is. I believe it's actually done at this point.
It
and
should
so
be, yeah.
And so the home games, which there might be one in Germany, but we'll see.
I bet we do. It would be very shrewd of Kraft to somehow get a road game in Germany.
Yeah, you might be right. Although he says that Pittsburgh's a road game and Indy's at home. I didn't think Indy was at home. I thought Pittsburgh was at home.
I'm pretty sure Indy's on the road, Pittsburgh's at home. That's what I thought.
That's what I thought. He said, apologies, Pittsburgh's a road game and Indy's at home. I don't believe he's right. But either way, I think the original one is right. Either way, it looks like home games, obviously Buffalo, Miami, and the Jets. Then you have Kansas City, the Chargers, the Eagles, the Commanders, the Steelers, and the Saints. That is an absolute gauntlet, dude.
Yeah.
Between Buffalo, Kansas City. Go ahead.
The Colts are at home and the Steelers are on the road. I just checked that. Yeah.
I don't know why I thought AFC South was on the road and AFC North was at home.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
All right. Well, there you go. So, and then the road is Buffalo, Miami, the Jets, obviously, and then Denver, Vegas, the Giants, Dallas, and Pittsburgh, apparently. So Indy's at home and Pittsburgh is on the road. So, all, again, and I think Denver stinks, but maybe they'll be better next year. They're in Vegas again next year. Certainly might be. Yeah. Certainly sounds like that might be likely,
Yeah, and I think on its face, it's kind of a difficult schedule, but also let's look at this. Some of these teams, the Colts, I don't think are going to be good next year. The Giants are very much a team in flux. We'll see what the Cowboys look like. I don't think that's a bad team. I don't know how good of a team it's going to be. The Raiders are very much in flux. The Broncos, I think, are going to be bad until we see them be good. They're going to get the Saints at home, which should be that's kind of your revenge game for the Jonnu Smith pick six game in Mac's first year. The Saints don't look that great. That should be winnable. Commanders are still figuring things out. Steelers, I don't know what they finished above 500 this year. I don't know how good they actually are. And then I look at kind of Chargers, Chiefs, Eagles as the non-divisional games. We'll see what the Chargers are. I don't trust them year over year. Eagles and Chiefs. You get them both at home. Yeah. The Chiefs are a team that I think they've game planned well against in the Mahomes era for the most part. And the Eagles are going to bring that QB run game. And this is your chance to kind of get redemption for the Ravens game and prove that the defense can handle that against the Fields game too.
Yeah.
it's if you're good enough to be the second team in the AFC East with all that, and you're good enough to go 4-2 in the division, you should be a playoff team next year. With
Right.
all if you're playing football that well.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, obviously, all things considered, right? All things considered, with injuries and everything like that, you would like to think you can beat the Jets twice again next year. You'd like to think you can split with Miami next year, right? So that gives you 3 wins in the division. Maybe you can beat Buffalo once, maybe not. I don't know.
Well,
But
yeah.
say you'd like to beat, say you can beat, Washington, Pittsburgh, New Orleans, Denver, the Giants, and Indy. That's 9 wins right there, right? And then that's not even counting, Dallas or Vegas or, LA, who I think is, LA, like, I'm sorry, no one should trust that team.
And I think what it does is it kind of puts you in the same spot you are this year. If you're good enough to beat even some of the good teams you play, probably going to be a playoff team. If you're not,
Right.
you probably won't be. And that's what the season ended up coming down to this year. If the Patriots could finish above 500 in their division, they were going to make the playoffs, and they did. They finished at 500. You beat Miami in the first game, or you beat Buffalo once this year, and you're in the playoffs, and they didn't do it. So, again, you are what your record says you are, and divisional record matters. And I think it's going to be tough. As long as New England gets swept by Buffalo every year, I think it's going to be real tough sledding. So I think number one thing is going to be find a way to split with them next year.
Well, and again, I think you bring in guys like Marcus Jones and Jack Jones to be able to play with a team like this. And again, you didn't have Jack Jones in this game, obviously, but again, outside of the special teams, you kind of hung with this team. Now, maybe Buffalo, maybe if you don't give up those 2, Buffalo ends up winning anyways because they're Buffalo and they're a better team than you. Maybe they do, but maybe you figure out a way to win this game.
If it's 23-21 or probably 24-21 because you're not going for 2 and Josh Allen has the ball at the end, I don't know if I feel great about that. You might still lose the game, but you'd rather lose on that than special team stuff.
Correct. Yep. Correct.
Question in the chat from Dark Blue Gold. Do we have the option of moving on from Aguilar and Jonnu next year? Aguilar is a free agent. I don't expect he's back unless he gets some kind of
not unless
a bargain bin contract would be what it would take for him to come back at. Jonnu would be expensive. I off the top of my head here, I think if he's a post June 1st cut, designated as such, then you don't have to eat as much money on it, and you could spread it out a little bit. You're still going to have to eat money, but
quite a bit. Yeah,
I think it's basically one of those. If you're willing to pay a little bit to make Jonnu go away, you can make it happen. Which, quite frankly, I'm willing to make. I'm willing to do that. Jonathan Jones, Jacoby Myers, Damian Harris, are those the top 3 free agents right now?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So that's, so you see what happens there. And if Jones comes back for the right price, we already talked about this.
Jones come back 2 back for the right price, and Myers, I think you prioritize bringing back.
Correct. Yep. So,
and after all that, depending on what happens, you may end up with $50 million in cap space, and then it's how much is Peppers? Does McCourty come back? And you fill out the fringes of stuff, and it goes down in a hurry. But if you decide to let Jonathan Jones walk and Damian Harris walk, you're going to have enough money to probably get one really good free agent.
Right.
So let's see where they decide to spend that money.
And the other thing, and if you want to criticize Belichick, and I will be the first to do this over the offseason, because I will be criticizing Belichick over the offseason, because last year, you move on from Stephon Gilmore mid-season and get nothing back. You get a 6th round pick in the 2023 draft, which you'll get this year. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get nothing back for J.C. Jackson, and he walks to L.A., and so you think, well, he signs a massive contract. We're going to get a 3rd round pick. Nope, sorry. He breaks his leg. And because of that, you're only going to get a 4th round pick back for J.C. Jackson, most likely, which sucks. That sucks.
Yeah.
And so you lose your number 1 and number 2 corner going into last year. Now, of course, Gilmore didn't play last year, but you lose what you assume to be a 1 and a 2, both very good cornerbacks going into last year. And you get back a 4th and 6th round pick in 2023. That is unacceptable. It would have been unacceptable with a 3rd round pick, but a whole nother round later is even worse. And it's just, that is really tough. And Dark Blue Gold, the question, I didn't want to pay JC Jackson. I'm not saying you should have paid JC Jackson. I'm saying you should have traded him at the deadline last year when you knew that team wasn't good enough to win the Super Bowl and you weren't going to spend all that money to re-sign him. It was stupid to keep him around. And so that was the biggest issue I had was you knew he was going to get paid. You knew it. And you were going to try to keep him at a bargain bin, or at a hometown discount, which JC Jackson was not going to take.
I will say,
traded him at the
deadline last year, they did think they might be a Super Bowl contender with how many wins they had put together in a row.
True.
I think it's easy to say in hindsight that you probably should have done something different there. You'll take the mid-round pick. It's not ideal, but it's
right.
I think of all the guys we've seen walk out the door, I think it's guys like Tooney and the way the Stephon Gilmore situation ended. Although they got something back for him that you look at, and a lot of talent has walked out the door in the last couple of years without a lot of return, and a lot of that is because of retirement. So you can't get any compensation on that. I think the Tooney one is the one you look back on and really regret and wish you got something.
Yeah, agreed. I agree with that. So, anyways, all right, let's get out of here. We've been here for 75 minutes now. So thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Wednesday or Thursday, some point midweek this week. We'll do a full googly of the 2022 at New England Patriots. That's a Zoolander reference.
Playoffs a little bit.
Does anyone get the Zoolander reference? I don't know if anyone got it.
I haven't seen it. I'm uncultured. So
okay. No, you're also 24. So I mean,
no,
movie came out when you were born.
I watch too much sports, man. I don't watch movies or TV. It's basically all sports for me. So.
Again, in your defense, that movie came out like when you were 2. So it's But either way, yes.
Are we gonna do a playoff preview? Or are we gonna look at some of the other?
I would think so. Yeah. I would think we'll talk some playoffs.
I'm curious for at least some of this stuff. What's going to happen? We'll see what the playoffs look like, and obviously we'll have some draft stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So we'll see. Anyways, thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate it, and we will talk to you midweek this week. Take care.